Hi, I'm Diana Giselle Yanez, host of Highly Sensitive Money. I'm a money coach, certified financial planner, and a highly sensitive person who brings money and social justice together. If you're someone who feels deeply, can endlessly think through how one decision affects everything else, or has ever struggled with all the things that traditional financial thinking leaves out, you're in the right place. In this show, I chat with highly sensitive people on how they handle their money, and with money experts on how they cultivate social justice in their work. Questions? Please go to allthecolors.net and schedule a free 30-minute call. And I'm happy to share resources on investment management, money coaching, workshops, or anything else money and social justice related. Join us in this episode as we explore money and sensitivity while honoring that all of our well-being is interconnected. In today's episode, I sit down with financial planner and author Shehara Wooten, whose story begins in engineering but unfolds into following her passion into financial planning, financial education, and doing the work she's called to do for her community. Shehara shares how she followed her curiosity about money into a career in financial services and why she now focuses on helping ambitious Black women in STEM step into promotions and higher pay without fear or overwhelm. We talk about the strength of community in creating lasting financial change, the framework behind her Wealth Gap Closers method, and the importance of aligning money with your deepest why. Shehara also opens up about the systemic history of racial inequities in wealth, while reminding us of the resilience and creativity that continue to move communities forward. Thank you, Shehara, for joining Highly Sensitive Money. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, well, I love what you're building. And you were reminding me right before the call that we met a few years ago. It's been a few years.
Yes.
We were both working in community workshops, right? Community memberships for teaching people about finances and getting empowered. And
Yes.
I know that you've continued on that journey. I'd love people to hear, how do you work with people and what's been your journey to get to where you are today?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on here. You know, the journey is always expanding and growing, but, to look back on everything, I started off as an engineer, coming out of college, and just really, I knew that even when I got the degree, I knew that wasn't going to be the thing that I was going to do for the rest of my life. And I just really got involved in trying to understand personal finances. And I just remember being an engineer and moving to a new city. I was 25 and I went to a financial empowerment workshop, and I was like, okay, I'm 25 and I want to retire by 30. What can you do? And it was the first time I had ever talked to a financial advisor. And, that really catapulted me really into exploring this as a career. And it's crazy because that particular advisor, I met with him and he did not, really help me. I was given paperwork and months passed and I was just like, what, did we open something? Why am I not having anything come out of my account? And I couldn't find him. I did see that he went to another firm, but at that time I didn't know what that meant, how to, because I was at this particular company, but it didn't seem like anything was opened up. So that just made me go down my own path of just digging deeper and deeper into trying to help myself and figure this out. And then over time, I just said, you know what? I think I would like to do this as a career because I don't see myself being an engineer for the rest of my life, or, at least in that capacity. I think once an engineer, always an engineer, but in that capacity. So that's where this all started. And I ended up joining another, a financial services company, and then going to a retail company. And then in 2016, so I changed careers in 2004. And then going into 2016, I ended up doing my own firm. But the reason why I paused is that coming up this weekend, I know this will be aired at a different time, but coming up this weekend is Labor Day weekend. And it was Labor Day, that Friday before Labor Day in 2004, that I changed careers. So, put in my notice. And then that following Tuesday, the day after Labor Day 2004, was my first day in financial services.
Okay.
So we're coming up on 21 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So yeah, by the time this airs, I'll have been, changed careers for 21 years. And it's just evolved into, when I first started working with people one on one, it was like if you could breathe, and just the way that the part of the industry I came into, it was just kind of like go out there, prospect, prospect, prospect. And for me, it was just more like, oh, yeah, if you could breathe, if you opened your door and we could work together, then you would become a client. And then as time wore on, I learned the power of niching and just having a niche. And I just really looked at my own story, my own journey, and decided to, still work with people one on one with my firm. And I have, a variety of folks, variety of genders, backgrounds, professions, mainly STEM, but different, professions and backgrounds. But then back in 2018, 2019 is where started becoming a little bit more clear about working with folks in a community setting and a group setting and seeing what that would look like. And so that's where I've been building that. And that specifically is geared towards it's a community, it's the education platform, as well as coaching that allows me to work with high achieving Black women in STEM. So as of this call, I think we have 15 people in the program, and they're having wins. And, sometimes I got to track them down to understand what their wins are. But when I talk to them, I'm like, oh my gosh, you've been doing all that. You're taking a sabbatical. You're doing that. And so it's been really neat to hear their journeys. But my goal would be to get to 100. Once I get there, I'm sure I'll keep wanting to do more and help more. But that's like my bogey. Like, yes, let's get to, 100 Black women in STEM, high achieving, who, may feel like they have a late start or feel like I've gotten all these promotions and I'm just like looking at where did all the money go? Am I really using it to the best of my ability? And they could be feeling frustrated or stuck about that. And I'm there to help them create the life they've imagined, and using techniques and having a, certified financial planner come alongside them. And then there's nothing like the power of community and seeing other people do these types of things too. It's just the power. There's so much power in community and being with like-minded people with like-minded goals that, it's almost priceless to be able to kind of be in that environment. So I'm looking forward to building it out even more. So that was a long answer, but yeah, it just kind of tells you my journey and how I've gotten to where I am today.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I wanted to stay here with the topic of community because I can see how much it lights you up. And that's initially how we even connected, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
one of my favorite sayings when it comes to community, it's actually from Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Yeah, that is on my list to read.
Well,
Yes.
he's got a portion of the book where he's talking about community and how one of the fastest ways to get to behavior change is to actually join people who are doing the thing that you want to do.
I love it. I love it. I agree. I believe it. I mean, I'm seeing it even personally in my life. Like recently in the last four weeks, I joined a gym, like a fitness boot camp. And, I was doing my own thing, but it's something about being in the room with others. You have a coach and you see them do one more rep and you're like, you know what? I think I can do one more rep too. And then you're like, okay, I've got this time frame. I'm going to come here. Even if people aren't looking for you, I don't know if they're all looking for me just yet, but I just feel like I need to be in the room because you're seeing so many others do similar things and you're like, I want to do this too. So it's powerful.
Yeah. If you see someone do something you're afraid of doing, but then you
Yes.
see them try and it goes well, or you see them try and it doesn't go as well. Either way, you're learning through their experience and it makes it a little less scary.
It does. It does. The power of, yeah, seeing someone else blaze that trail or do something similar, it is definitely takes the unknown, because the unknown can be scary. And so it takes away some of those questions and like, will I be able to do it? So I agree with that. That's powerful.
And can you give us an oversight of like when you come into the community, what is it? You said it's also an educational platform. So are people learning things on their own, or is it mostly like meetings that you're holding? I'd love to hear more for people who are curious about it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we're on a platform called Mighty Networks, and so I'm seeing school everywhere now, but it's like, it's been around. Mighty Networks has been around for years, similar to like a circle, even similar to like a school. But the community, I'm calling it the Wealth Gap Closers Method, and that is inclusive of the curriculum. And so the course, the online, the signature course, it actually is a 24/7 access and it's self-paced. So people get the opportunity to go on there and go through the various lessons. I looked and I saw that there's like 54 lessons. So it is a good amount of content and lessons that I recorded and put together. And it's based on a framework that I developed out of my book, which is in the meantime, Own Your Financial Narrative. And so I have a framework: build, live, save, give. So each one of the chapters and the lessons incorporate some aspect of each one of those sections, and it broadens it out. So the book explains it, but then I go into it in those lessons where you're actually doing the work and being taken through that process and that journey to do that. So building your net worth, living is really looking at your cash flow and how you're living your life, and you're spending and you're saving. And then we've got save, which is really save and protect. So I put all that underneath there. So building that security, but also saving for things that you want to do in the future, if it's traveling or taking a work break or a sabbatical, or something that is really meaningful to you. And then also protecting everything that that you've built up. And then the last part is the giving aspect, and being philanthropic and making your money have a purpose to it. And it's something that when I talk to so many Black women in STEM, I interviewed, I would say about 60, 70, even more than that, about the program and about like what people need. And philanthropy is something huge. And not everybody, but many people said that I want to have something where I can give back, or I want to be able to make sure that I'm giving. And it's so it's so associated with your happiness anyway. So I put all those together, and that's all in those lessons. And then of course people get to chat and ask questions or share wins in the community. So it's almost like a Facebook group plus a teachable, but all in one. And then twice a month, we'll have the online coaching as well. So that's when I get on there. And it's just nice the way it's set up, to hear other people's questions, because it may be something that they never even thought of, others that are listening in. And then also be able to ask your question as well. And so then we go through that, and it's all connected with tools that they have to measure savings rates, debt rate, and look at their liquidity. So there's so many different facets that they're watching for, and they have access to me to ask specific questions about their situation as they work through the program. And I give them lifetime access to it. So that makes it nice where, they're not feeling rushed, like I've got to get all this done in 6 months or in the next 90 days. They can, life changes constantly. So when you think about, Mitch Anthony said something about, you have about 62 life transitions throughout your life, and that could
Wow.
potentially cause a money decision. Now, not everybody's going to have all 62, but the potential is there. So I just felt that it was important to not make people feel like I got to get all this done now. So when they, a year from now, when they're like, you know what, things have changed. I lost my job, or, I had, a medical situation and it's changing my, what I've been planning and what I've been wanting to do. They have access to me to make updates and get direction. So it's just a program to really help people throughout navigate their wealth building journey.
I love that. And I remember at the beginning when you were sharing your story of starting as an engineer, you said, once an engineer, always an engineer. And I can hear
Yeah.
that and how you've built this, right? You got 50,
You-
like 54 different tools, like different videos that people can go through and really incorporate it into their life. That's amazing.
Yes, yeah. I didn't realize until I finished it, and I'm like, I think there's a few more I want to add, but I'm gonna keep it where it is right now. Go from there. But I always tell people when they join, well, especially now, I'm just like, if you get through those first four, I have it broken up into 8 chapters. I think it's about 8 or 9 chapters, and they have their lessons within them. And I'm like, if you get through those first 4 chapters, that's gonna be the foundation. So, starting there and just working through that and doing it as quickly as possible because, that's where that radical accountability takes place. So even though there's not necessarily a time frame that you have to get things done, I think it's important that, you be intentional when you do join. And so this year we did a no spend challenge, and one of the participants was able to discover that she was spending, I think it was like $200 a week on DoorDash. And she was just like, it was very easy for me to just go ahead, and I like that Mediterranean place and those bowls they make, but I can make that at home. And that's what she ended up doing. And she was like, and these are very enjoyable. So obviously, not everybody will make those kind of decisions, but it just highlights and magnifies like some of the areas that are like, you know what, I've just been a little bit, lax in this area and I could probably improve and change. And that particular person, she had already doubled her savings rate on a weekly basis, which was amazing. But then she found more money. And I was amazed by that. So just helping people reach their goals quicker. Yeah.
Definitely. And I know that your target, the people you really want to serve are STEM. So they're really going to enjoy like your engineer mind because you were talking about like your savings rate, your burn rate, like all of these. I imagine that there's a lot of like math tools that they're also going to gain from this and they're going to be able to use.
I use a tool called Elements Financial Monitoring. And so it was designed by another CFP, certified financial planner, and he actually geared it towards dentists. And so honestly, I'm not sure how much math they're all doing, but definitely there's math involved. But what's nice is this does the calculation for them. So if they don't want to get into the weeds with all that and to figure out what is the actual calculation, they don't have to. So that's cool too. And they get to see some really cool colors and, the terminology that he uses, are very CFP type terminology, but they make it look really nice so that you're like the colors of my shirt. So that you can be like, oh, this looks really cool. And if I don't have to, I don't have to calculate anything. I don't even have to know what that equation is if I don't want to. I can just look at this and say, okay, let me enter in my data. Let me enter in like how many, savings accounts I have and brokerage accounts and what their values are. It's almost like no matter what career you are, you can't get away from it, right? So you have to enter these things in. But it's just nice to know that you have someone to talk it out with. And that's what I'm here to do. If anything gets confusing or anything like that, because I do find that some, even if engineers, they're just like, I know my stuff, Shehara, and I'm good with knowing what I know, but you know what you know. I'm not trying to learn yours. I'm not trying to be you. So they're honestly like, I don't know. I think maybe the target that I have, they may not be like your typical engineers. They're just kind of like, or what I would say stereotypical. And maybe there's a difference too between men and women because like most of them are women and they're just like, I'm not trying to know all that stuff. I just want to know is is that number, what does that mean? And how does that affect me? And how is that going to make sure that I can, feel safe and feel like, okay, if I did get laid off, I'll be okay. And if I did, want to help a family member, is that okay?
And I love that because I think, I mean, at the end of the day, when you have like a healthy relationship with money, you're not working just for the money. You're not just working for the number. You're working for what that number can do, right? Be
Yeah.
it take the trip, help a family member, leave a
Yeah.
job that's draining.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what, and that's what I find. So, yes, the numbers are there, but it's just really about what they're living the life they've imagined and making sure they can do that. Yeah. So that's wonderful to see when they get to do that.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And that you also mentioned the book that you wrote. In the meantime, I remember reading this. This was a couple of years ago. I probably should have like read it again before our interview, but I remember what really stood out for me is that you're saying like, yeah, there's these systemic issues. There are real systemic issues that are creating a very real racial wealth gap, and that
Yeah,
can't be the reason that we don't address this. Like we can make change happen.
absolutely. Absolutely. And so, we've talked about how I've been focusing on Black women in STEM. The book was really geared towards the whole, right? So really those in America, Black Americans, that like the whole community. So then that way everybody can have access to this. And what I find is that people that are not Black Americans have found it useful as well because it does provide American history and it provides really cool stories about people who have done very well with their businesses and people who worked at corporations and got through there and just how they've been able to thrive even in the midst of economic injustice. And I think everybody has been able to find themselves or locate themselves in there, even with some of the interviews that I've done. And then just the universal financial tips that I share in there too, that marry with those stories and with the history that we, talked about with the racial wealth gap. So it's a timeless piece. Like I still talk about it, and still try to, get the word out. I met a woman who is doing something towards ending the racial wealth gap as well. And she read the book and was like, oh my gosh, I've got some ideas and I was like, okay, that's great. I wrote it in 2021 and it's still something that is still very much needed. Very much needed. The discussion is needed to be had. And I just said, let me do my part. So I work with folks one-on-one with my firm and then, got my one to a few with the group coaching program and then one to many with the book. So trying to see how I can reach everybody in some way.
And for people who are curious about what they might learn from the book, are there like two or three things that you might want to share about the racial wealth gap history to give people context?
Yeah, yeah. So what drew me to write it was just over time, I was like, oh, I'm an engineer. I want to become a financial advisor and help people and help them save. And over time, I did start to see that my clients that were Black Americans would have lower net worth than many who were not. And over time, I also saw how that affected my own business, just because obviously if you're in an asset-based business, there's not going to be a lot of assets for more people. It's like the numbers, right? So I ended up thinking, wow, this racial wealth gap is serious. Didn't really notice it fully. I knew it was always there, but until I got into, wealth management and seeing the numbers. And so what I learned was that a study was done. It might have been 2015. I can't remember the exact year, but I learned that Black wealth would go to zero by 2053 unless we do something about it. And that just struck me like zero, so yeah, zero. So that as a whole, as the whole community. So I just was starting to look at things that I had seen and I knew a lot of history, but I don't know that I fully made that connection until I actually got into the industry. And then just started to see it for myself. And then I did more research, and then I learned about redlining. I learned about the Tulsa race massacre. I had always heard about it. I've always heard about Black Wall Street, but I didn't fully make that connection in terms of how it affected and created that wealth gap. Also, just, of course, 1865 and, Emancipation Proclamation, and just really thinking through how my ancestors were freed of enslavement, but they weren't given anything to get started, like literally nothing. And then you started to see that everyone else did. There was homestead acts, land, like, hey, come over here and you're going to get this land, but the folks that actually built the country didn't get any of that. So it started to really connect for me. I started to connect those dots. And that's what led me to write the book. But then I also was inspired by the fact that I'm here today, and my grandparents and on both sides of my family somehow made it to this point. And everybody wants greater and better for the next generation. And just looking at where we are today, having worked our way up and not being given, or even, it's not even being given, but just getting like restitution for what you already did and what you provided, for the nation. And so yeah, and seeing that resilience of still being able to do things in spite of the economic injustice out there, and seeing people still be able to make things happen. And so I wanted to bring that up. I wanted to talk about reparations, but it was just way above my ability at that time. I don't know when I'll ever do that, if I'll ever. It's so much involved. And so I decided to take it from the angle of, let me look at the history. And there's still so much history that I didn't really go through, like I didn't get really deep into the redlining. And then I'm in Dayton, Ohio now. And my dad was like, did you realize that redlining really started in Dayton? And then I started watching documentaries since I've lived here a few years, almost 18 months or so. And I was like, oh my gosh, and those Levittown property, like these Levittown communities, and you start researching these things and you start to see where that is. And there's still that legacy here in Dayton. There's still very much that split. And you could have a property in this area, mainly Black community, have a property that predominantly white community, historically white community, same property. And you could have two completely different estimated values for each one of those. And that affects wealth in a major way, and the home still was taken care of by that person, these original owners. And you got this guy, he's like, okay, I'm 70, you're 70. We both have these similar homes. We've been taking care of it, but you can sell yours and get like 200,000 off of it. Mine, bought it in the 70s and it's still worth, 60, 70,000, right? So you can't get as much off of it. You can go move into the nice 55 plus community. I cannot. I have to stay in this house because it's not being appraised higher. So those are the kind of things that are happening and still happening today. And it's deeply rooted, it's deeply embedded, because now, if it's been that history, they're like, well, it's always, there's no grocery stores here. Whole Foods is not coming over here. All these things layer on top of each other, and your property is still not growing. So your wealth is still not growing. So those kind of things are layered into the system, and it really affects wealth.
It really affects wealth, and it affects resiliency. And it's
Mhm.
we can look back and see how many times it's been so systemic, but it's still happening now, right? And like now, okay, 2025, we're living with the results of decisions made 100 years ago, 50 years ago, decisions that are
Yeah.
still at some level being made today. And I
Yeah.
love that in your book, you're like, and people still grow. You started off with your story, right, of your own, the change that you've seen in your own family line. And I hear how you want to bring that to other families and that
Yeah.
I'd heard that before that by 2020, that 2053, Black wealth will be to zero. I know it. I know a couple of other CFPs, Black CFPs, who like that was like a
Mhm.
calling card that made them like, I got to do something.
Yes. 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 And it's a matter of, it's like not putting that pressure on yourself to do it all, but to do something and to make an impact in the environment that you're called to have jurisdiction over, because otherwise you'll be super overwhelmed and you may not, it may cause you to just kind of halt and say, okay, well, if I can't do it all, then I'm not going to do it. But we all have an impact, that we can make. And so that's what I said. I'm going to do my part. And then as God leads me to do other things and to take on other projects, I will do that and then go from there. So, yeah, so it's definitely a passion. I'll share the cover. I don't know that we showed that.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
I know. I have the ebook, so it's not as you can hardly see it if I put it in front of a screen.
Right, right, right. So there's the ebook, there's a hardcover paperback and Audible audiobook. And
Did
I
you
it's
record it?
myself. Yes,
Oh
yeah.
yeah. I
With
love
my
that
voice.
one.
So everything you're hearing right now, I did it in the read the book. So it's pretty cool. It was a neat undertaking.
Yes, and you learned so much of it from it that you're still sharing today through your community.
Yes, yes, and I still share, on LinkedIn, I have YouTube, like all those things, like just little snippets. I haven't been doing as many quotes lately, but pretty much what I'm saying, whether it's a workshop or whether it's a, LinkedIn video or not LinkedIn. Well, it could be a LinkedIn video or a YouTube video, YouTube post, Instagram post, any of those things. It's all stem foundationally from the book, and then I just been expounding upon it as I learn more too.
Well, and but even more than that, like I want to make sure that we give you credit for the 21 years that you've been in this industry.
Yeah, thank you. It's amazing. I'm like, whoa, I've been in the industry more than did engineering work. So I appreciate that. Thanks for highlighting that.
Yeah, and I remember at the beginning of your story, you were 25, you had just started engineering, and you're like, how do I get out in 5 years, right?
I'm still here, not trying to get out. Like it's just, what I learned, it was about finding my purpose. It was about finding what I really enjoyed. And I was looking at the other engineers and I was just like, I don't want to do that 25 years from now. Like, I don't see myself doing what they're doing. And I agree. I believe it's a very honorable profession. It was just, I was looking at it for me personally. And I was just like, I don't know. I don't see that. I don't see that. So I got to figure this out. And that's where I landed. And I love it. Like, it's just, the journey is like layers of an onion too. Like, because you keep learning more and more about yourself and how it evolves, and like I started off in wholesaling side of the business, so working with financial advisors, and then I became like, oh, working with individuals, and now I work with individuals and group setting and became an author, like all those types of things. I just never would have known that that's the journey, that I would have been taking. So, and then I incorporated other fun stuff, throughout, like teaching line dancing and somehow trying to tie in, like, how do we keep the line dancing and the finances in line and all these different things. But that would be like my outlet to do things creatively and get people together and stuff. I haven't done that in a while, but yeah, it's just different things throughout this journey, different projects that I've taken on along the way.
Yeah, that's so fun, line dancing. And I mean, I do a lot of salsa dancing, and I have talked about salsa dancing and regenerative investing and like what the
Well,
parallels are between it. Because I mean, we're financial planners, but we're also people.
what exactly? Exactly. And then I love, painting, like, different creative things. I'm not a painter. I love painting and I do believe they're different. But just, yeah. I mean, there's so many parallels to painting and all that, like and cooking and trying different recipes and making new recipes. So those are all fun too. Yeah.
And one of the things that I love doing when I'm working with new clients is learning about their hobbies, learning about what lights them up, what feels like a safe place, like some place that they already feel really confident. And then how do we
Yeah.
start to use those as metaphors for their money to make money feel more like a place where they also feel confident, where they also are like, I know what I'm doing here.
Absolutely, because it's a part of our whole person. And I love that you do that because it's to me it gets down to the why. I try to ask why, and I may not do it as many times as I need to, but I try to ask like 3 times at least. But I was on the call with someone earlier and she was giving me I just want to, grow my money market and I want to retire and I want to build up my retirement account. I'm like, why? Because it's more than just doing those things. And then she was like, because I want to, I might want to fix up my kitchen. And I'm like, why? Because I didn't, and like we got into that she grew up in a home where she had one bathroom, 4 people, not a bad thing, right? But she didn't want to have to share bathrooms with people anymore. Like she wanted to, have a bigger, and she has that, but these are some of the reasons why she has that now, and digging a little deeper, and even, just that stability and why does security, what does financial freedom mean to you? Like just asking why and even asking yourself, like The Gap in the Gain. That's an amazing book. Have you read that book?
So what was that? The gap in the gain?
Gap in the Gain. Yes. And so in the book was where I was first. I was asking why before, but I do challenge, the folks that go through the program when they're doing their we call them instead of goals, we call them possibilities. So when they're doing their what we call smarty possibilities, a spin on SMART goals, smarty possibilities, we want to ask ourselves why 5 times. And I got that from the book. It's somebody else that created it, but Benjamin Hardy is the one that wrote about it in that book. And you ask yourself why 5 times. By the time you get to that fifth why, you should really have a good understanding of why this is important to you, why you want to do it. And so it's not just about, I want to save in my 401k. It's more than that. I want to save in my 401k because that is going to help me to be able to buy the things I want, to help the people I want, and to live the life I want, travel when I want to, not have to worry about, is it okay for me to take a trip, help a family member? Or is it okay for me to remodel my bathroom? Like these are all the things people are thinking about. And sometimes you're in a place where you have to make a decision between the three. But many have told me they don't want to have to make a decision between the three. So that's why they save. That's why they put away. Because they want to be able to not have to be concerned about these things, And
Yeah.
so interesting hearing people and their answers once we get deeper past the surface, you know.
And
Yeah.
what you just said, it's like we don't want to make a decision between the three. We don't want there to be any trade-offs. One of my takes on it, and I'm curious to hear what you think of it, but it's like life actually is trade-offs. I can't paint
Mhm.
and salsa dance and cook at the same time. Like I'm gonna have to
Right.
pick one.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep. It's about timing, right? It's about timing and how it incorporates in your life right now. So yeah, maybe the kitchen is what you need to focus in on right now. But it's not going to be forever. And that's the thing that I think people, should look at. Like, I do need to take care of this right now because it is super important. And once I get done with this, then I can do that, that trip that I wanted to take. Maybe it'll be next year. Maybe it'll be the year after that. I still will do it though. That's what I'm not, and that's what I think people want to feel comfortable with, not saying, oh, well, that's never going to happen.
Yes. And I think we can so often, things can feel so insurmountable. We're like, it's never going to happen. I'm just not going to try, which is where some of
Yeah.
that money avoidance is. Like when you
Yes.
think, I can't help my family save for retirement and get the kitchen I want. So let me not even try.
Right. Right. Now I'm not even, and then that's self-defeating. And then, yeah. So, and I think that's where we come into play. And that's why I do those coaching calls with them too, because it's like, okay, when you come across that kind of crossroads, let's have a discussion about it and help you get to a place where you're just like, okay, yes, I'm going to get the kitchen done. I'm going to get this out the way. Then I'm going to get over to, Michigan to see the family or the friends that I've been avoiding and make that happen. Just personally, I've had to make decisions like that. Sometimes it is for me, like doing them in tandem because I just don't want to waste any more time. Right. So I'm just like, okay, I can do this. I might have to shuffle some things over here, but I might be able to do these two things at the same time.
Yes. And when I'm working with people on their cash flow, on their budgeting, I
Hmm.
have like a portion that's like fun and enjoyment, a portion
Yeah.
that has to be fun and enjoyment for today, because that's actually what's going to make it sustainable. Going back to something you said earlier of like when you have a really clear why of like, why are you prioritizing? Why are you saying no to DoorDash? It makes it easier to say no to DoorDash when you're saying yes to like a 6 month sabbatical. You're like, forget DoorDash. I want some.
I'm like that. Yes, exactly. I want this work break. Yeah. Yes. Still haven't figured it out how to do it as an entrepreneur yet, but we're working on that.
Mhm. Yeah, there's something about being an entrepreneur where it's different. Learned to like, I've learned to like have some projects that are the main source of income and then like let everything else kind of postpone it for a month. But 6 months, I don't know. I don't know how that would happen. I have to ask my friends that have taken maternity leave. How did you do it? Because
Yes. I'm very curious too. Yeah, if you hear about it, let me know. I am definitely curious about all that. But I do believe in having, small sabbaticals where it's more like a weekend away or we're going to call it a little vacation or something like that. As a business owner, it just like, okay, I can break away for a few days. Yeah. So yeah, it's fun to think it through.
so another focus of this podcast, we've talked a lot about social justice and money, definitely, but I also focus on highly sensitive people, just like you. Like I had to niche down on who I was serving. And I also was like, I think I'm serving myself. And highly sensitive people like me, that there's the way to describe it is DOES. There's an acronym called DOES. D is for depth of processing, where it's not just like the surface level thing, but it's like all of the ways through. So when I ask a highly sensitive person about their money story, they may start with their great grandparent, just to like give me context of what's going on, which I love.
Long ago.
One month, I know.
Love it.
Grandparents met on this farm. Yeah, whatever it was.
Yeah, I love
O is
that.
for overwhelm. And that's where highly sensitive people, because they're taking in so much information, there is a tendency to get overwhelmed and then become an ostrich of just like hide from the topic
Mhm.
completely. E is for emotional depth or empathy,
Mhm.
which is like taking on other people's emotions. It
Mm.
also shows up in like a lot of people who work in social justice, many people who are there's a lot of overlap with high sensitivity, because when you see that other people don't have their needs taken care of, it feels like
Mhm.
you don't have your needs taken care of. We're very
Mhm.
porous. So other people's pain feels very, very personal. And the last
Mhm.
one is S for sensitivity or sensory input. And that's things like I can't have everything be too bright. Things can't be too loud. Clothes are itchy.
Mhm.
Like, but also on the positive side, a sunset can feel so intense because you're
Mm.
having so much sensory input to it. Like that's the positive side. It's not just negative things. And I'm
Yeah.
curious, are you familiar with the term HSP? Do you see that in the communities that you're serving?
that's a great point. The first time I heard the term was from you. And it was our conversation earlier this year. And I was just like, wow, that's powerful. I feel like I could see it in some ways in me or looking at family members. And maybe I just didn't know the name of it, you know? And so, but I think it's an amazing thing to be having awareness for and to look out for. What would you say is the best way to interact and to respond and
Yeah.
that type of thing? Yeah.
So it's about 20 to 30% of the population. So out of like your five closest friends, probably. So it's just like a personality trait, kind of like extroversion, introversion. A lot of the clients that I attract have this, and I figured it out kind of after the fact because I've always been like this. So like some of the metaphor things, some of the like wanting a lot of context around things,
Mhm.
and they often come to me because of the overwhelm that
Mm.
money for many of us, like it's such a taboo topic. It can be
Yeah.
so stressful. And for
Yeah.
HSPs, those two things, it just means that they often don't engage with their money until it's already on fire. You did,
Wow. Like, oh, let me just stay away from this. Yeah. All at
yeah,
once.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Wow. That's something. Yeah. I'm definitely look for that. I've had a range of folks come into the program. Some have been in that kind of money on fire phase, and then some have been preventative. Like, I just don't want to get to that place. So I figure this is a good time for me to work with you now. And then that way I can get the right things in place to make sure that, that it doesn't get that way. I don't know that everybody has been that far down the line where it's been so such an emergent.
Overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, it's been overwhelming, but I don't know that it's at that level yet.
Mhm.
Like, I feel like even for me personally, I've had some of those things, but not all at once. And it sounds like it's an all at once thing. Is that correct?
It's a way
All
of
those.
moving. It's a way of
Okay.
moving through the world. And one of the big things that's needed is like, I love that your program is, there's no timeline to it because that creates a lot of open space for people to come to it when they have the bandwidth for it. So that can
Yes.
be really helpful. And also
Yeah.
like having a way of making it. And this is, I think what happens here is that money is mostly scary for everyone. It's a little
Yeah.
extra scary for HSPs. So when you make things
Mm.
comfortable for HSPs, you're actually making it better for everyone. It's kind of like the American with Disabilities Act was specifically for people who were in wheelchairs, but it made it better for anybody that might have been on crutches, anyone that was pregnant, anyone that was going through pain. Like everybody benefited from it. So again, some of the tips for HSPs is like having more open time, adding more like lightness to things, play, and just validating that sometimes people need a little bit more support as they're making decisions. I have a coach who's not an HSP, but who when I interviewed for her, I was like, what do you know about HSPs? And she's like, I know that you guys need a lot of verbal processing. And I'm like, yes, okay, I'm ready to because I need to talk
Love
to
that. Yeah.
the moon before I'm ready to take any action.
Yes. No, that's great though. But it's good. It's good to know that, like, and the patience that it takes with it and the understanding. Like, they may not make a decision right away. They've got to still process it, and then being there to answer all their questions.
Yes, all of the questions, things that you're like, how does this have anything to do with this? But it somehow does. It somehow feels connected.
Yeah.
A big plus side of this personality trait is that because you see so many connections, sometimes you can be really creative, which I think for me comes out in the metaphors. So with my clients, I often like they have their answers. Like you
Yeah.
know what's going to work best. One of the things that I always remind my clients is that I'm an expert on money, but I'm not an expert on your life. Like
Yeah. That's so true. 'Cause you know all the nuances that I may not know, right?
yes,
Yeah. That's
yes,
good. That's very good. Yeah. And immediately what I thought about was ChatGPT, right? And AI and how people do go in there to ask those kind of questions, a lot of those. But there's that nuance where you still got to take ownership yourself because you know certain aspects of your life. Because I mean, we got to be honest, people are using it, right? So they're asking questions, they're, trying to get answers, but there's still just those subtle things about yourself that it will not always be able to understand. And, even if you input all the data about your life, there's still things that it may not catch.
Yeah, we can't 100% outsource our decisions either to a CFP or to ChatGPT.
That's absolutely. That's going to be the quote. I don't this. If you want a lot of people to watch this one,
Good clickbait.
If it's just, AI is the thing now, so the algorithm will be in your favor with that quote. I love that.
Well, as we're wrapping up, Shehara, it's been so fun to talk with you, to hear more about your story, to learn more about your book and the community you're building, and to share like what could make your community more welcoming to HSPs, or just more inclusive of them, which you probably already have. If you have 15 people there, there's a couple who probably, maybe they don't identify with the term, because I actually didn't hear about it till 4 or 5 years ago. But I've always moved that way. And I've always thought, like, why can't I just make decisions? Why am I so upset when I can't hear the news? I would hear the news and I would just start crying. Wow. And like, why can't I get a thicker skin? And now I'm like, I don't have a thicker skin. And that is why I've structured my life in a way where I can just accept my sensibility, my sensitivity.
That's excellent. I think that's amazing. Yeah. And that's why I'm like, maybe I have some truth. I don't watch the news. It's been for years. I do not watch it. Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, I know what's happening today. Something is happening bad. Yeah, because that's all they talk about. I don't need to get that regurgitated today.
It's like, I know what's going on with the stock market. That's as much as I need to know. Like, I'm good otherwise. I know it's not going well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for explaining and highlighting HSB so that we can be more aware, and even more aware of our own personal selves. Like, because I definitely could probably relate to a lot of those facets that you mentioned.
Yeah. And when you're with family, when you're with friends, it's kind of like having I wonder if this person just like is taking in more than I can see. And maybe that's why they need a little bit more time to make a decision. I'll finish with like one of my favorite examples of HSPs, because they're actually across species. So when you're counting certain type of deer, certain type of fish, and they see the sensor that like counts how many there are, HSPs will be like, no, I'm not going to touch that. I don't know what it is. Like, why would I touch some wire? People have learned that for certain species, they have to just add 20%, because the highly sensitive fish are like, I don't know what that is. I'm not touching it,
Yeah.
And we're like, what?
Wow, that is so interesting. Yeah. Starting to put together some things in my head about family members that could definitely. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I love that, And just it takes a moment, walking into people's shoes. And to me, it connects more to just the whole premise of walking in love and seeing people, in terms of what they're going through and what they're dealing with. Because sometimes we can forget about that.
And I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Once again, thank you for your time. And I'm excited to have those 100 women in STEM, 100 Black women in STEM come and support your community more than that.
Absolutely. I thank you. I appreciate it. And I received that, Diana. Thank you.
Take good care.
Okay, you too.
It was a joy to spend time with Shehara. I so admire all of her work creating a community for Black women in STEM. The time she's put into creating a book that not only looks at the history of financial racial discrimination, but also outlines a path forward. And finally, the way she balances her deep commitment with her purpose and joy. Even though the topics we covered were difficult, we were never far away from laughter and deep connection. I'm so glad to be able to share this conversation with listeners. Thank you for joining me on Highly Sensitive Money. I'm Diana Giselle Yanez, and I hope this episode helped you see how money and sensitivity can work together while honoring our interconnected well-being. We have the power to create a system where everyone's needs are met because nature is abundant. If you found value in today's conversation, please take a moment to leave a review and share this episode with someone who could benefit. Your support helps this message reach more people navigating their own financial journeys. A thank you goes to Mike Schul for the music and Juan Antonio Nunez for producing. For more resources on bringing money and social justice together, sign up for my monthly newsletter over at allthecolors.net. I also invite you to schedule a free 30-minute call where we can talk about money coaching, investment management, and all things money and social justice. Until next time, remember that your sensitivity and deep thinking is your superpower.